Welcome to the Retail Media Moguls podcast, brought to you by Platform 195. We share trends and strategies across retail media to help you accelerate your brand growth. I'm your host, Stuart Adamson. So welcome to the latest episode of the Retail Media Moguls podcast. I'm your host, Stuart Adamson, founder and CEO of Platform 195. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by the head of UK Commerce and Global Partnerships, EMEA at Google, my friend Henry Eccles. Henry's worked with Google for over 17 years in roles such as head of YouTube and Google Plus marketing and head of market insights. Henry delivered extensive media consultancy to Google's top clients and Europe's top advertisers across multiple sectors, including FMCG, retail, travel, telco, and auto. Henry also designed, built, and launched large-scale research platforms across France, Spain, and Italy, allowing for lower cost and faster turnaround reporting on advertising effectiveness. Henry, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Stuart. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Look, thanks for coming on. I think you and I go back quite a long way, actually. I think we've been banging the drum for retail media for probably the best part of 10 years, certainly in the sort of UK and European markets. It's actually been really interesting, sort of probably for you to give us a little bit of background or a bit of colour to that career journey that you've had, and then how that sort of evolved.
You dredged out my early years there, but I guess going back even further, I worked at Sky TV for a little bit. I had an ill-fated career in finance, which I didn't much enjoy and didn't last long at. And then before I joined Google, I was at a small marketing and research consultancy. And then, I was 7 years in our Google marketing organization, doing various roles from our market insights team to some of our consumer products, Google Plus and YouTube you mentioned. And then I joined our partnerships team in 2014, looking after commerce media owners. And more latterly, I now look after not just commerce, but also our largest UK news media organizations as well.
Yeah. And I think we probably met in about 2016 or something when I was transforming the brochure contributions that Thomas Cook was getting. So the legacy sort of brochure catalog model. And we sort of, that's where we sort of architected. I think we shifted out of Turn, I think we were using back then for our audience extension, our Thomas Cook audience product. And then obviously we then got thrown this hot potato of how to transform the brochures. And that's where we got our heads together, didn't we? And worked out how we were going to make that.
Yeah, I think you were an interesting one because I think you were, as you say, you were using Turn, and my view was that you needed to use Google Ad Manager, obviously, and then it wasn't just Google Ad Manager. You stuck together the cornucopia of Google's ad tech on buy and sell side to what do you guys call it? It was Hotel Everywhere, right?
Hotel Everywhere, yeah. It's Thomas Cook's hotel product, which is very successful actually, and now is the model on what we built Platform 195 and up with Dads on was to how to help retailers scale that long tail hotels long tail of suppliers that might only have small budgets. But yes, I mean, that's really interesting. So that in that period, I mean, you and I used to sit there and wonder, like, what's going on across the market? How are these? We could see a lot going on in groceries, but have you seen the market evolve? How have you seen that evolve with other retailers across that time?
I think it's slow, or it was slow, certainly up until the pandemic. So I was always banging the drum that retailers were showing indiscriminate images of products to all users at all times in all geographies, and that really didn't make a great deal of sense in the digital world. And that actually transforming all of their merchandising placements on site by serving them using an ad server, such that they could actually use consumer data to kind of target people who might be interested in one particular product over another. It was mind-boggling to me that that retailers were so advanced in how they did marketing and how quickly they'd adopted digital marketing to market their own wares to consumers, but had kind of almost sort of neglected the fact that they had retail.com domains, which were in of themselves media properties, and they were monetizing them, but they were monetizing them via kind of traditional analog trade marketing value exchanges rather than actually having a media model, because ultimately they weren't just selling carrots or toasters, they were selling eyeballs and audiences, but they were very slow, I think, to kind of adopt that mindset. And it wasn't probably until the start of the pandemic when obviously there was a huge shift in consumer behavior, because obviously everyone was buying everything online at that point, So it was obviously a huge kind of shot in the arm for e-commerce more generally. And then, with that came also, GDPR, cookie deprecation, and an understanding that actually first-party data, and specifically sales data that retailers own, is ultimately the currency upon which media is bought, sold, and traded. So I think we're now starting to see post-pandemic, and with the demise of third-party cookies and the ability to track cross-site has really kind of accelerated and sharpened the minds of everyone within the retail sector. And that's obviously all been galvanized by, I guess, Amazon, who are the original gangster here, who sort of quietly trotted out a media business that's 35 million or 35 billion plus a year. So I think it's made everyone sort of sit up and watch, look, and listen. And now there seems to be something of an arms race to monetize transform their legacy trade marketing contributions from suppliers and make that kind of fit for the digital age.
And how is that going, do you think? Are they managing to do that? Are they seeing it, getting it?
Well, so I think certainly most of the retailers that I speak to are very much kind of on the early steps of their journey. I think they are getting it. I think the biggest thing that all of the retailers have struggled with is ultimately the skill set required to kind of stand these types of businesses up inside of a retail business. Retailers are generally merchandising teams, buying teams. As I say, like, they're not necessarily media professionals. So finding media professionals that work or that are fully embedded with a retailer, that's really about importing those skill sets and bringing in that know-how and knowledge and experience from elsewhere. I think you're seeing like a large you're seeing large amounts of hiring in the space as well, right? You'll see retailers are essentially creating media group operations within their businesses and starting to create sort of governance around, like, obviously what that retail media team can do, how they work cross-functionally with the security teams, the e-com teams, the marketing teams, the buying teams, to put together a proposition that is hopefully incremental for them as a retailer and drives additional value to their supplier base, all at the same time as making sure that they're offering a customer experience that is better than what they've been offering previously.
Yeah. And what sectors do you think are doing well in this now? Is it still groceries leading the way? Or
I think the original early adopters were travel, and I'm always kind of flabbergasted when I go and talk to retailers and say, look, why aren't you looking at Expedia and Booking and Kayak and Skyscanner and all of the travel companies, because they were very quick to understand that offering kind of marketing services to airlines and hotels and car hire companies, when travel essentially stopped being a sort of omni-channel type activity. I don't know when the last time anyone had an aeroplane ticket. It's very much QR code or a digital boarding pass now. It's been a virtual product for a long time. So I think the travel sector, probably by virtue of the fact that margins within flights especially is super tight, were the early adopters here. I think where you see the greatest kind of acceleration of retail media amongst kind of pure play retailers or real retailers who sell physical product is those who are multi-channel. The big grocers, the Walmarts, Targets, Sainsbury's, Tesco's of this world, they've been quick to adopt by virtue of the fact that they realise that they have huge scale and they have the data that they want. I think the grocery sector is obviously the most interesting because that's where the most amount of money sits. FMCG or CPG manufacturers and suppliers are the ones with these vast marketing budgets. P&G for many years was the largest advertiser on the planet, and obviously it's a habitual purchase, buying crisps, buying ice cream, etc. which is somewhat distinct from sort of consumer electronics or fashion or other categories which are somewhat more sporadic. But no, I think we're seeing an across the board adoption of retail media, with no one sector kind of outpacing the other. I guess, as I said, with the exception of travel, who I think have kind of been there and done that already, and they are definitely the most advanced. I think the only other thing I'd say as well is that, you know, it's a hell of a lot easier to stand up a retail media offering if all of your conversions happen online. So, you know, any retailer who is digital only and does all of their transactions online, obviously the measurement, closed loop measurement is often talked about. Closing that loop between, a media impression and a sale is a hell of a lot easier when it all exists within the digital world. So if you're a grocer and you've got, the vast majority of your transactions happening, offline in a store, then onboarding that data and linking it through to a digital media impression is just a lot harder, a lot more kind of cost intensive. Match rates are, a significant issue, and that's obviously been one of the reasons why we perhaps haven't seen quite as much of the FMCG or the CPG spend pour into the kind of retail media space. But I think that is starting to change.
Mm. And how is that attribution piece now for retailers? Because it's always, obviously there's the, or certainly for retail media organizations when they're selling partnerships across their platforms and beyond, are they actually being able to demonstrate success there, and or is it still very much a halo effect of, we've sold this much product this month? How are they developing?
So for those who have all of their online, for those who have all of their sales online, I think it's easy, and then it's a choice as to how much transparency you give back to your end supplier. I think if you're a grocer, it's genuinely difficult, right? It's like you need to have a mechanism like a loyalty card, most obviously, to ensure that you are, capturing all of your sales. But no one is going to, you can't assume that 100% of your shoppers are necessarily going to adopt your loyalty card program. Increasingly, like, privacy and consumer awareness of privacy means that you're never going to have a 100% visibility on all of the transactions that happen and be able to tie that to an identity. And just because you can tie it to an identity in the offline world, you've still then got to bridge the offline to the online world as well, and that's increasingly difficult. So obviously with the demise of the third-party cookie, the idea of just being able to find match keys around PII and cookies is increasingly difficult. We're seeing, I think, a lot of clean room providers to basically onboard data in a privacy safe way. So that's that's an interesting space. But certainly my experience is that match rates between the offline world and the online world are not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. And whilst they don't need to be, because I think we now very much live in a predictive era rather than a precision era, by virtue of the fact that true deterministic marketing anywhere and on the web is basically not possible for good reasons around GDPR. There's just a hesitancy. I think sometimes there's the belief that one-to-one marketing and purely deterministic stuff is the holy grail, and I guess it is, but that's at odds with the law and consumer privacy expectations. So I think it's a hump that retailers and especially their suppliers need to get over, that actually any investment they make in media, whether that's TV, outdoor, online, is always going to be a broad targeting cohort, and therefore the results that they get back from it are going to be at an aggregate level. So I think it's still a challenge, and I always say to my clients, it's like, let's not have perfect get in the way of better. Ultimately you need to be able to offer accountability on marketing and media spend, and you can, so you should be able to sell against that with confidence. You don't need to have 100% precision in this space. Marketing is not a precision science.
So obviously you have on-site ad server technology with Google Ad Manager, as well as you've got obviously DV360 and the whole of the Google marketing platform for audience extension. Are you seeing retailers now doing a lot more in audience extension? Are they still doing sort of owned and operated inventory? Are they evolving like that? How's that?
So I think I've seen the vast majority of retailers, when I spoke to them sort of 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, they're like, oh, let's go to offsite first, because it means we don't have to touch the retail.com domain, and therefore I don't need to go and ask permission from the ecom team or the security team or anyone else like that. So let's go and do the offsite piece first. And then they realized that actually that requires quite a lot of, standing up of technology, getting your data in good order. And it's also quite a tough sell as well, because why is buying, YouTube or Facebook or, just a third party display and video, is that the stuff that suppliers really want? And ultimately, I think what retailers have realized is that the stuff that everyone really wants is the lowest funnel media that anyone can offer. And ultimately that's why Google search is been a very successful product down the years. And I think what we're seeing is that retailers have now said, actually, retailer.com search is a highly potent media type, and historically hadn't been monetized in any way, shape or form. So the on-site display, so a retailer's on-site display, as I mentioned at the start, I think always has been monetized, albeit in an analog way. So retailers were saying, well, hang on a second, is it going to be incremental if I rip out my content management system and put in a publisher ad server? Am I not just delivering ads in a different way but still collecting the same money? Which I think is fair critique. Whereas within search on a retailer's site, that was always essentially an under-monetized or an unmonetized space. And the advent of Amazon sponsored product, again, I think has shown the way to most retailers that that they are increasingly going to their owned and operated first, not least because it's 100% margin for them. And it's kind of increasingly quite easy just to implement, a sponsored product ad solution on site and start generating money, from day one, and then perhaps use that revenue to kind of then think about expanding into kind of the offsite space, which is ultimately where I think the real opportunity sits, because there's very little inventory really within retailer.com search. Like you only search for a mattress once every 10 years. You often are searching for flights or TVs or other things very sporadically. The only thing that you buy very habitually is grocery, but then actually the volumes of grocery search are very low. There aren't that many people that go to Tesco's.com and search for beer as a proportion of all those people who go into the Tesco stores and actually buy beer. So if you're looking to market a new variant of Brewdog or Stella Artois or whatever it might be, the way that you get reach and frequency is not likely going to be on a grocery.com site. It's going to be offsite, on YouTube, on social, on connected TV, increasingly on third-party display and video, where traditionally all of these FMCG brands went for for TV to get reach and frequency against a target audience, and you can now do that digitally very well. So I think that's where the real money sits, is when the FMCGs start to understand that actually reach and frequency digitally, but with measurement and with targeting that is based on consumer insight and based on purchase data, is historical purchase data. That's where the big opportunity is at the top of the funnel. Yeah. But yeah, what we see, I guess, initially at the start of this kind of movement is retailers looking to kind of fill the bottom of the funnel, which is understandable.
Yeah, and obviously you've had your own journey with the Google tech. Obviously the sponsored listing product now sort of stood down, but obviously you've still got Google Ad Manager that can deliver on site. What's the Google view at the moment around retail media tech?
So I mean, obviously we have a huge number of various technologies for on-site ad manager, as you mentioned, and then we have all of our off-site buying technologies, DV360, Google Ads, advertiser ad server in Campaign Manager. I think really the interesting place is really around all of the data and how you house your data and how you curate your data, both for targeting and for measurement. So we're seeing increasingly not just retail media clients, but all of our clients adopting BigQuery and cloud customer databases, customer data platforms, and making their data as usable as possible, trying as much as possible to having a single view of the customer to ultimately drive the right message to the right user at the right time. Obviously AI is a hot topic at the moment, but being able to have all of your data and use artificial intelligence and machine learning to to help both with what creative to show a user, and sort of the predictive nature that you can harness from all of our AI tools that can sit across all of your data, I think is ultimately where we're seeing a lot of innovation and lots of really exciting stuff. And it's definitely coming back to my point around being predictive rather than precision. I think that's where we're seeing a lot of clients kind of really put a lot of investment in that, because that's not just for their retail media, if they have a bank of suppliers, but actually increasingly, as I mentioned at the start, many of these retailers are very, very sophisticated advertisers. So starting to see the coming together of the advertising brain within a retail organization and the sort of retail media or partnership side of the retailer, starting to share expertise, share tech, and ultimately it is just one data source that they're working off.
So let's talk. I mean, obviously we've got the cookie, the removal of cookies in, I think it's probably a year, unless you push it back again. When is it now? April next year I think is the
second half 2024, I believe, is the.
So May, June next year. What impact do you think that's going to have across the board here, and is it going to push Google into a sort of primary position with all the other tech you've got, or is it going to have a huge impact on your business and others?
So that's a good question. I don't think anyone really knows what's truly going to happen. So I mean, obviously we have our privacy sandbox set of APIs and solutions, and they work, I'm told and believe, and we've released some blog posts around the efficacy of some of the sandbox APIs versus existing cookie technology, and we're not seeing the same level of performance. So I think there's a lot of encouraging signs to say that when cookies do go away, actually digital marketing is by no means broken. I think it will live on and thrive, and as I said, we don't live in a one-to-one precision era anymore. It's very much around modeling and predicting what audiences might be where. So, and I think for Google owned and operated, we have some interesting products, customer match, enhanced conversions, which allow an advertiser to bring their data together with Google's data in obviously a privacy safe way, and get the fullest view of their marketing funnel and conversions as possible. And I think we're starting to see as well with some of the other APIs for offsite. So if you're a retail media client wanting to move into offsite media and third parties, we've announced a beta product called Pair, which is publisher advertiser identity reconciliation, which essentially leverages clean room technology to bring together a publisher's data and an advertiser's data in a privacy safe way. So neither the publisher has sight of the advertiser's data or the advertiser has sight of the publisher's data, but it does allow for ultimately the targeting of the crossover between the publisher and the advertiser. And I think that's a really promising really promising space to see that actually, a retailer, if they are looking to, do partnerships with, a large, news media organization or anyone else, can actually still bring their first party data to bear on third party media owners. And then obviously, continue to track that all the way through to the conversion as those users, click and move through to the retailer site and hopefully convert.
And did you say that's live now, or that's in beta? What was
it's in beta, yeah. So I mean, it's I think we have a blog post out about PAIR, PAIR, publisher advertiser identity reconciliation. So that's interesting, and I think you'll see a lot more of a lot more in the space, both from Google, but obviously there are there are sort of concerted industry-wide efforts, obviously, to ensure that the cookie deprecation, which is obviously, as you say, for the end of second half of next year, will mean that the business can continue as usual. It's always I think being the Google view that actually it doesn't. Obviously, there's a lot of eyeballs on Privacy Sandbox and obviously what's happening with cookie deprecation, and rightly so. But ultimately, as a lay person, or as a if you're a small business or any marketer, you shouldn't really necessarily need to know the ins and outs of how it all works. It should just work, and so I think that's the aim and ambition that we have, is that it will just continue to work, and that the methodologies behind how it works, they are complicated, but at the same time, obviously they will uphold all of the the stringent privacy laws and best practice. So I think it's going to be an interesting time. But how it all plays out is I think remains to be seen. It's going to be really interesting to see how retailers adapt and what they do, and also what do the publishers do as well, what do the content owners do. We're seeing some interesting partnerships between Sky, ITV, Channel 4 with retailers as well around connected TV inventory. So I think it'd be interesting to see some of the large kind of broadcast reach type news and content publishers also thinking about how they can partner up with retailers to ensure that that there's a good advertising canvas for retail media beyond the retailer.com.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really exciting how this whole data clean room thing evolves over the next sort of probably 3 to 6 months, really. Obviously, there's you guys, there's Amazon, and then the specialist players as well. But I mean, for us, even building our own roadmap on our technology, there's a big piece of sort of, we're building bits, but it's just there's a kind of wait and see, because you can go and spend a huge amount of money developing something that suddenly is there anyway, and has all the backing of a Google or an Amazon. So it's going to be really interesting. But your role has actually broadened now, hasn't it? With the sort of, and interesting to hear you talk about those news publishers, because I believe you've sort of got an added.
Yeah, so I now look after our commerce media owners, but also our largest UK news publishers as well.
That's really interesting. So is that in order that you can bring those two together, like you've just sort of talked about, across commerce, retail, and news media?
I think that's I mean, why don't we go with that and say yes? Because I think it's convenient. Yes, I think at Google we're redesigning our and it's the one thing that since I joined in 2006, like, change has been a constant. So you always have to be flexible and nimble working at Google. And I guess when I was given the opportunity to look after some of our largest content and media owners in the UK, I jumped at the chance. I think there is a great synergy between as I say, like the Guardian, who've got huge reach, not just here in the UK but also internationally. The same for the Daily Mail and the Sun, and many of our kind of like UK news titles, and they are that's premium brand safe inventory. And if you're Unilever or Procter and Gamble, you shouldn't have any problem advertising on any of those sites. And obviously, if you can do that in collaboration with a retailer's first party data, then actually that's a great advertising canvas or surface for for your brand. So actually, I think there is a natural synergy between the large kind of high reach content owners, news owners in the UK and retail media.
Yeah, there's premium inventory, premium sites, brand safe, and all those great things. So how is the relationship though with Google with these news sites? Obviously, there's been a history of some war of words, I suppose, for want of a better expression. I mean, how is that relationship now?
Well, certainly all of my clients are absolutely delightful, and they're very lent into Google, and obviously the relationship and the partnership that we have. I'd like to think that you continue to challenge them on how we can help them ultimately drive more yield from their inventory. Yes, obviously there is a dynamic between the news industry in the UK and technology platforms. I think that goes without saying. But broadly speaking, there's a very positive relationship that we have with all of our news publishers. And as I say, I think there's a huge amount of opportunity. As the world has evolved, there's a real requirement and need for good authoritative news journalism, not just here in the UK but everywhere. And as you say, from an advertising standpoint, all of the aforementioned partners work hard on their editorial, and they've got great content. They are there to deliver that great content to their users. A lot of it is ad supported if it's not behind a paywall. And those are great advertising surfaces for any advertiser. And I think we're seeing a really good evolution of, we're not just stuck in the sort of 300 by 250 world of just sort of vanilla banners anymore. There's a lot of innovation in terms of video and rich media. So I think it's an exciting space. And again, with the pandemic, there's been a greater more eyeballs on digital news than there's ever been. So I think it's an exciting space, and as that evolves out into audio and video as well, I think there's still a long way to go before you hit anything that even looks close to a ceiling in terms of opportunity.
Yeah, well, I think we're sort of close to time, but it's been absolutely brilliant insight into your world. Really useful, I think, for people to hear how the tech's evolving. If you were, let's go back, let's say, given your experience across the market and all those retailers and all those years, if you were going to give a bit of advice to somebody setting out on their retail media journey today, what would you advise them?
I think I mentioned it earlier. I think don't be obsessed with retailer.com inventory. Yes, it's important. Yes, it's possibly a good place to start. It's not the only place to start, but if you think about the supplier budgets that you're bringing in, and what does that supplier really want to do? They want to acquire new customers. They want to reinvigorate lapsed customers, possibly. And yes, you can do some of those things on your own retailer.com, but actually I think it's about making sure that you're helping your suppliers' advertising or messages show up at all stages of the customer journey, and ultimately if it's around traffic acquisition, it's about net new customers or winning market share, then you really need to be working the top of the funnel just as hard as you are the bottom of the funnel. So whilst absolutely on-site search and on-site display are going to be absolutely key kind of key channels for any retailer, they are very much kind of the bottom of the funnel. That's when the customer has already decided that they want to possibly shop with you as a retailer. But ultimately the solutions that I think are really going to be incremental for the supplier base is making sure that those messages are out there on the broader upper funnel media, so YouTube and socials and third-party display and video, connected TV, even Google search and shopping, where they haven't decided where they're going to be shopping from. So I think that would be my advice: is don't obsess about on-site search or on-site display. Obsess about the whole funnel, and think about the full customer journey, not just the bit that's closest to the point of conversion.
Yeah, and I totally concur with that. Look, Henry, I won't take up any more of your time, but just to say a massive thank you for taking the time. As I said, it's been a brilliant insight into your world. What I often ask, but not always, but often ask and definitely ask you is whether you'll come back and join us again in, let's say, 6 months' time and see how things have evolved, because it'd be really interesting to see how you guys have evolved pair and, and what else is happening in the space. But yeah, as a final, will you? So first question is, will you?
Yeah, happy to.
Great. And as I said, final, very big thank you to you for taking the time. As I said, it's been a brilliant insight. So, and hopefully we'll get to see you again soon.
Cheers, yeah.
Thanks, Henry. The Retail Media Moguls podcast is brought to you by Platform 195. To learn more about Platform 195 and how to connect retail media with intelligent marketing to accelerate growth, visit platform195.com. And then make sure to search for Retail Media Moguls in Apple Podcasts, Spotify and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And on behalf of the team here at Platform 195, thanks for listening.